Your vacation home is ideal for our family reunion. We're arriving next month, Dad declared. I'd purchased a $680,000 lake house with MY money, Mom added. And your sister's kids are staying all summer. You never use it anyway. I said sure. Then changed every lock, security code, and gate access. When they arrived with a U-Haul packed with luggage, have you ever felt like your own family saw you less as a person and more as an ATM with a house key? Because I did. And when they showed up on my doorstep with a U-Haul, ready to take over everything I owned, they had no idea I'd spent weeks preparing for their grand entrance. It was a Saturday afternoon, early spring, at the lake house I'd bought with my own hard-earned money. The water was cold and gray, the air thick with the smell of wet pine. I'd invited my parents up for just one night, still trying to be the son who kept his family close. My dad, bless his heart, leaned against the deck railing like he already owned the place. Your vacation home is perfect for our family reunion, he announced, loud and proud, like he was doing me a favor. We're coming next month. I blinked. I actually looked behind him, half expecting someone else to be standing there, someone he was actually talking to. Then my mom, casually perched in one of the brand new Adirondack chairs I'd paid for, smiled, like she'd already finalized the seating chart. And your sister's kids are staying all summer, she added, her voice sugary sweet. You don't use it anyway. My throat tightened. Across the deck, my niece was smearing barbecue sauce on an outdoor cushion. My nephew had his dirty shoes propped on my brand new coffee table. Mom didn't say a word to them. She never did, not when it was my sister Dana's kids. Only when it was me. I heard the soft click of the sliding door closing behind me, sealing me in. That sound made it feel so real, like I was being locked out of my own life, even as I stood right in the middle of it. I didn't explode. I didn't raise my voice. I just swallowed hard and said the first thing my parents had always trained me to say, sure. My dad clapped his hands, satisfied. Good, he beamed. I'll tell everyone to start planning. Everyone. Like my house was a community center, a free-for-all. I looked out at the lake, fighting to keep my face neutral. My hands were freezing, even though the sun was out, because what I really wanted to scream was, I bought this place with my money. My name is on the deed. You didn't find it for the family, you didn't help me buy it, you didn't even ask if I wanted a reunion here. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. I'm Simon. I was 38 at the time, a broker in the city, 2 hours away. I did well enough that people just assumed I had endless money and endless patience. No wife, no kids. That mattered in my family because it meant I was always the extra adult, the flexible one, the convenient solution to everyone else's problems. My sister, Dana, had 3 kids and a husband who bounced between jobs like it was a hobby. She also had my parents' full attention, their full sympathy, and, apparently, full access to anything I owned. For years, I'd been the quiet wallet. It started small. A temporary car payment when Dana's SUV was about to be repossessed. A short-term loan when my parents' furnace died. A just this once deposit for a family trip because everyone was so stressed. I didn't even hand them cash. I just paid directly. Utilities. Insurance. Repairs. I was the guy who said, just send me the bill. At first, I told myself it was normal. Families help. People hit rough spots. But the rough spot never ended. And the gratitude? It never showed up. Instead, it became an expectation. They didn't ask anymore. They informed. They didn't say thank you. They said, well, you're the only one who can. Every time I tried to put some space between myself and their needs, there was some little punishment. A family dinner I wasn't told about. A group photo where I was accidentally cropped out. A birthday party at my parents' house where my name was missing from the cake, but my check still covered the catering. I learned to swallow it, to smile, to keep the peace. Because the truth was simple and, honestly, a little embarrassing. I wanted them to choose me for reasons that had nothing to do with my bank balance. So when I bought the lake house, a $680,000 place I'd saved for and negotiated hard for, I didn't even tell them at first. I wanted something that was mine. Something quiet. Something clean. It was my reward for years of playing responsible. I pictured calm weekends, coffee on the deck, maybe a friend or two. Maybe someday, someone I loved. I pictured peace. I forgot my family doesn't allow me to have things that are just mine. The first warning sign came before my parents ever stepped inside. 2 weeks after closing, my mom called me during work hours. "Sweetheart," she chirped, like she was about to share a tender memory. "What's the gate code?" I paused, hand hovering over my keyboard. "What gate code?" I asked, completely bewildered. "The gate," she repeated, irritation creeping into her voice, like I was playing dumb. "The community gate. Dana wants to bring the kids up there to see it." They're so excited. I hadn't given Dana the address. I hadn't given anyone the address. "How does Dana even know about it?" I asked. Silence. Then my mom did what she always did. She turned it into me being difficult. "Why are you being so secretive?" she asked. "We're your family." I didn't answer the real question because I already knew. They found out because they monitored my life like a resource. They watched for upgrades. They listened for new assets. They waited for something they could claim. I gave my mom a fake code. 1 number off. I told myself it was a harmless test. If they tried it without permission, I'd know. The very next day, my neighbor at the lake texted me a photo from his porch. It was Dana's minivan, parked crooked in my driveway. Her kids were running across my yard like it was a playground. Dana herself was holding a margarita cup she definitely hadn't brought from home. My neighbor's message was simple. "Did you know you have company?" My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my chest. I called Dana immediately. She answered like she was doing me a favor. "Oh, hi," she chirped. "We're just checking it out. The kids love it." "You're at my house," I said, my voice tight. She laughed. "You weren't using it." I gripped my phone so tight my fingers went numb. "How did you get in?" I demanded. Dana paused for a second, probably deciding which lie would be easiest. "Mom told me the code," she finally said. My face went hot. That was not permission. I practically hissed. "You can't just show up." Dana's tone sharpened. "Relax," she snapped. "It's not like we're hurting anything." In the background, I heard a crashing sound and one of her kids yelling, "I found a room with bunk beds." That wasn't a bunk bedroom. That was my office. "Dana," I said, barely keeping my voice steady.
"Leave. Now."
She exhaled, like I was exhausting her. "Fine," she huffed. "God, you don't have to be weird about it." Then she added, like a final punch, "Dad said we're going to use it for the reunion anyway." That was the first time I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan.
So,
when my parents stood on my deck that spring day and casually announced their takeover, it wasn't a surprise. It was just bold. And that boldness? It did something to me. It took all my old excuses. They mean well. They're stressed. They don't realize. And shredded them into something ugly and clear. They realized. They just didn't care. They had decided that my life was a shared family resource, like a Costco membership. And if I didn't fight, they would take everything. Quietly. So I smiled. I nodded. I said, "Sure." Then I went inside and started making a list.
not an emotional list.
A practical one.
Locks. Codes.
Gate access. Garage keypad. Wi-Fi. Security cameras. Spare keys I'd hidden under a planter because I thought I lived in a normal world. I knew exactly what would happen if I confronted them up front. My mom would cry. My dad would get loud. Dana would start texting cousins and spin the story. Simon hates kids. Simon thinks he's better than us. Simon won't share. They'd make it a moral issue.
So I didn't give them that.
I let them keep believing they'd won. And then I quietly removed their ability to take from me. That Monday, I made the calls like I was handling a business transaction. First, the locksmith. A full rekey for every exterior door, front, back, garage, basement, even the shed. Then, the security company. Reset every code. Changed the admin login. Removed any family member access that had been added during the initial setup because, Yes, my mom had insisted she needed it in case of emergencies. I remembered the look on her face when she said that. Not concern. Control. Next, I logged into the community portal. Changed the gate access list. They had a section for recurring guests. I deleted everyone except myself. Then, I created a new guest pass. Temporary, timed, and attached to my phone only. I turned off the old keypad code entirely. Finally, I drove up that weekend and did a physical sweep. Checked the hiding spots. Under rocks, inside fake flower pots, behind the grill. And there it was. A spare key I didn't remember leaving, which meant someone else had. I held it in my palm for a long time, staring at it like it was proof of something I didn't want to admit. My family had been treating my house like theirs since the minute they knew it existed. I dropped the key into the lake. It sank without drama. That felt fitting. Then I walked inside, sat at the kitchen island, opened my laptop, and pulled up the camera feeds. I watched my own empty living room from 3 different angles. It felt strange to feel safer in my own house because I'd started guarding it like an asset under threat. But I did feel safer. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was making an adult decision that protected me. Then I went to the fridge and stuck a small printed sign on the inside of the cabinet door, where only I would see it. It said, "This is not a family resource." I didn't put it up for motivation. I put it up because I knew how easily I could be guilt back into old patterns. I needed a reminder. The family reunion was scheduled for the second weekend of May. I didn't remind them. I didn't mention it. I let them build their fantasy. My mom sent texts in the family group chat, one I usually ignored because it mostly contained Dana's kids' soccer photos and passive-aggressive family values memes. Mom posted, "Can't wait for everyone to be together at the lake house." My dad replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Dana replied, "Kids are already packing." A cousin replied, "Wow, Simon, you're so generous." I stared at that line for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it proved my point. They weren't even pretending it was my choice. They turned it into a performance. Look what Simon is doing for us. Generosity was the costume they put on my boundaries. So I stayed silent. And I waited. They showed up on a Friday. I know because my cameras alerted me. I was in my city apartment, eating takeout, trying to pretend I didn't care when my phone buzzed. Motion detected.
Driveway.
I opened the feed. And there it was. A U-Haul. A full-size orange and white U-Haul, parked in my driveway like a moving truck at an eviction. Behind it, my dad's truck, my mom's SUV, Dana's minivan. And people. So many people. Dana's kids hopped out first, already yelling, already running toward the lake like they were arriving at summer camp. My mom stepped out, holding a big tote bag labeled kitchen stuff, like she'd already decided my kitchen wasn't good enough. My dad came around the back of the U-Haul with a clipboard. A clipboard, like he was managing a project. Then my dad walked up to my front door and punched in the old code with confidence. He didn't hesitate because he wasn't guessing. He believed he owned the right to enter. The keypad flashed red. Denied. He tried again. Denied. Dana walked up, annoyed, and yanked the handle.
Locked.
She tried the side door.
Locked.
Then she did the thing that made my stomach twist, even though I was miles away. She looked directly up at the camera above the porch. She smiled and waved, like she was being cute, like she hadn't brought a U-Haul to my house. My dad stepped back and looked around, confused at first. Then the confusion shifted into irritation. I could see it in his posture. Chin lifting, shoulders squaring, like the world had made a mistake and he was about to correct it. My mom walked up and put her hand on the door, like she could soothe it open. Then she pulled out her phone. I knew what was coming before it happened. My phone started ringing.
Dad.
I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring. Then Mom. Then Dana. Then my cousin Brent, who I hadn't talked to in a year. The camera feed showed Dana stomping across the porch, phone pressed to her ear, talking fast. I couldn't hear her, but I could read her lips when she looked up at the camera again. "What, Simon?" My dad walked to the U-Haul and slapped the side of it like he was trying to wake it up. Then he pointed at my front windows. My mom started crying, big, dramatic wiping motions, like she was already preparing the story for the family group chat. And Dana? Dana walked to the back of the U-Haul and started lowering the ramp. She started unloading luggage onto my driveway. Not because she had permission, because she thought persistence would force compliance. I watched all of it from my phone, my heart beating hard, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. And then finally, I did the one thing I'd promised myself I would do. I made one clean move. I didn't drive there. I didn't argue through the doorbell camera. I didn't send a long, emotional text. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and closed the one channel that had kept them comfortable for years. It was a scheduled transfer every Friday. $1,100, sometimes more. When something came up, it went into my parents' account, under the excuse that they were catching up, that retirement was hard, that Dana's kids needed stability. I'd set it up years ago because it was easier than saying no every week. It was the opposite of a boundary. It was a habit that let them believe my money was part of the family budget. I clicked into the payment settings. My cursor hovered for 1 second. Then I hit Cancel Transfer. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure? I stared at it, felt my hands tremble slightly, and clicked yes. Then I went one step further. I removed my parents as authorized recipients. I deleted their saved account information. I made it so it couldn't be restarted with a guilt text. The screen showed, transfer canceled. It was so small and calm, just a line of text. But my chest loosened, like someone had cut a rope I didn't realize was choking me. Then I made one more call. Not to my dad. Not to my mom. To the community gate office.
Hi, this is Simon.
There are unauthorized vehicles attempting to access my property. I'm the homeowner. I want security to be aware that no one has permission to enter unless I personally add them. The woman on the phone didn't ask for family details. She didn't ask for backstory. She just said, "Understood. We'll handle it." That's what boundaries sound like when they're respected. Then I opened my phone and sent one message to the family group chat. One sentence. No insults, no explanations. No one has permission to use my lake house. Please leave the property. I hit send, and then I turned my phone face down. I didn't watch the cameras for a minute. I just sat there in my apartment and listened to my own breathing. Because for the first time, I wasn't negotiating my own life. I was simply enforcing it. The fallout hit fast. My dad left a voicemail that started calm and ended sharp. Simon, stop this. We're here. People traveled. You're embarrassing your mother. My mom texted. Why are you doing this to us? Everyone is watching. Dana texted. My kids are crying. I hope you're proud of yourself. Then the cousins started. Not all of them. A few were confused. A few were angry. But one message came through that made me stop. It was from my Aunt Melissa, my dad's sister. She was the only adult in my family who ever talked to me like a person. Her message was simple. Did you tell them yes, or did they tell you? I stared at that question for a long time because it nailed the truth so cleanly it hurt. They hadn't heard my yes. They'd assumed it. I replied. They told me. Aunt Melissa responded. Then let them learn. I didn't cry, but my eyes burned. I checked the cameras again. My parents were still on the porch. But now there was another vehicle in the driveway. Community security. 2 men in plain jackets, calm posture, professional distance.
One of them spoke to my dad.
My dad pointed at the house, arms wide, like he was presenting a case. My mom dabbed her face with a tissue. Dana stood by the U-Haul ramp, arms crossed, mouth tight, furious that reality wasn't obeying her. Then something happened that made my stomach flip in a weird way. Security didn't argue. They didn't debate family politics. They simply gestured toward the vehicles, toward the road.
Leave.
My dad's shoulders slumped slightly, not in regret. In rage. The kind of rage a person feels when control slips and they realize no amount of volume will fix it. Dana grabbed a suitcase and slammed it back into the U-Haul. One of the kids started whining, and she snapped at them, pointing like it was their fault. My mom leaned toward my dad, speaking quickly, probably saying something like, Just call him again. He'll cave. But I didn't. I didn't cave. I watched them load everything back up. I watched my dad pace once more, like he wanted to put his fist through my door. I watched my mom glance at the camera and suddenly stop crying, like she remembered she was on display. I watched Dana kick the ramp up with her foot, like she was ending a tantrum. Then the U-Haul pulled out slowly, like a retreat. They didn't wave goodbye. They didn't apologize. They left like I'd stolen something from them, which in their minds I had. I'd stolen access, and access had always been their favorite form of ownership. That night, my phone didn't stop. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. My dad escalated to threats that were still dressed up as family concern. You don't want to do this. You're going to regret treating us like strangers. Dana tried guilt. You're ruining the kid's childhood. My mom tried the old classic. I didn't raise you to be selfish. I listened to them, not all at once, in small pieces. And something kept standing out. None of them said, "We're sorry we assumed." None of them said, "We should have asked." None of them said, "We crossed a line." It was all about what I had taken from them, not what they tried to take from me. So, I sent one more message, not in the group chat, but directly to my parents. I'm not your backup bank. I'm not funding a family that treats my life like it belongs to them. Please don't come to the lake house again. Then I blocked my dad for 48 hours. Not forever. Just long enough to prove something to myself. That I could. The next week, my Aunt Melissa called me from her landline because she knew my parents were probably monitoring my cell number like hawks. They're telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown, she said. I laughed once, without humor. Of course they are. They also said you promised them the house, she added. I didn't even hesitate. I said sure because I didn't want to fight on my deck. That's not the same thing. My aunt hummed. Good, she said. Don't explain more than that. People who believe them were always going to believe them. Then she said something that landed softly, but stayed heavy. You know this isn't about the lake house, right? I know, I said. It's about them losing the ability to use you, she replied. And that was the truth. My parents tried one last move a few weeks later. They didn't show up at the lake. They showed up at my apartment building. My doorman called me downstairs and said, "Your parents are here." I felt that old instinct, the one that always pushed me to smooth things over. I walked down anyway because part of me still wanted to believe they'd come to apologize. They hadn't. My dad stood with his hands in his pockets. My mom had that wounded expression she used like armor. My dad said, "You're really doing this?" I said, calm and even, "Yes." My mom said, "After everything we've done for you," I almost laughed again, but I didn't. I said, "You didn't do this for me. You did it for access." My dad's eyes narrowed. Then he tried the final angle. "You don't have a wife. You don't have kids. Who are you saving all this for?" There it was. The quiet contempt. The idea that my life didn't count unless it was structured the way they approved. I looked at him and said, "Me. Just that. Me." My mom opened her mouth to cry again, and I cut her off with the only sentence that mattered. I won't fund a family I'm not respected in. My dad stepped forward, like he might argue, but the doorman was standing there, watching, polite and solid. And my dad hates being seen as the problem. So he did what he always did when he couldn't win. He turned it into a dramatic exit. My mom hissed, "You'll be sorry," like it was a curse, and they left. The consequences were exactly what you'd expect. Dana posted vague Facebook statuses about toxic people and selfishness. My mom stopped liking my photos, like that was punishment. My dad told extended family I was being controlled by money. But the bigger consequence was quieter. They actually had to pay their own bills. Dana actually had to plan her own summer. My parents had to accept that they couldn't just announce things and have me execute them. They didn't like it, but they adjusted. Because people always adjust when the free ride ends. And me? I started sleeping better. Not perfectly. There were nights I still felt guilty, because guilt was the language my family used to keep me obedient. But the guilt got smaller every time I didn't feed it. A month later, I drove up to the lake house alone. I went on a Wednesday, deliberately. No holidays, no special occasion.
Just a normal day.
The air was warm. The water had turned blue again. The trees were full and loud with birds. I parked in the driveway and walked to the front door. And for the first time, I didn't tense up. I typed in the new code and stepped inside. It smelled like clean wood and lemon cleaner. Quiet. Mine. I made coffee, carried it out to the deck, and sat in the same chair my mom had sat in when she announced my sister's kids were staying all summer. I looked at the lake and let myself feel something I wasn't used to feeling. Relief. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just relief. Later, I went into my office and opened the drawer where I kept boring documents, insurance papers, receipts, manuals. That little sign I taped inside the cabinet door was still there. This is not a family resource. I peeled it off, folded it once, and put it in the drawer. Not because I didn't need the reminder anymore. Because I'd built the reminder into the structure of my life.
Locks. Codes.
Boundaries. And the simplest truth I'd ever said out loud, me. That night, I grilled a steak, ate it on the deck, and watched the sun go down. No shouting, no guilt texts, no one unloading luggage like my life was their storage unit. Just the sound of water against the dock. And in that quiet, I understood something I should have learned years ago.
I didn't lose my family that day.
I stopped renting myself to people who never planned to treat me like one. What do you think? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family who felt entitled to your life? What did you do? I'd really love to hear your experiences in the comments below.